Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. This is Mad Mike, and today we're going to cover something a little different than we've done in the past. Well, kind of the same as the Captain Marvel breakdown for if that movie's going to fail. But this time we're going to be looking at something a bit different. This time we're going to be looking at Alita: Battle Angel. Now, I think most people have probably seen the advertisements for this movie. They had a Super Bowl commercial. Last year, I believe. They've had tons of advertising around the internet and on TV, and a bunch of stuff. They came out with some trailers, which looked all right. But again, this is a bit of a different animal than the Captain Marvel, because this is not a comic book movie. This is a manga movie. Now, for people that kind of don't know what manga is, it's basically Japanese comic books, anime, that type of thing. So the problem that you run into here is that comic book movies are one thing. They caught on and they look a certain way and they're very successful. But anime and manga films, or films that are based off of those, are notorious for bombing at the box office, no matter how popular they seem to be. Now, if you do animated films, that's different. Those usually turn out successful. But if you do a live action adaptation of a manga or an anime, generally it does very poorly. And we've seen that in the past. But this is just kind of an examination of this one, because everybody's toting this movie as being the one that finally breaks the mold, the one that finally does good. It's kind of like the good video game movie, essentially. That similar idea, where for a while people all thought like, okay, there's one video game movie that's going to break open the mold and we're going to be able to make money off of it. This is kind of the same thing with anime now. They're still trying to search for that film that they know they can make into a franchise. So this has been done before, both by Hollywood and also Japanese studios. And usually it ends in a complete train wreck. You can look at Dragon Ball Evolution for that, which is a notoriously bad movie, and rightfully so, based off of Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball series, which encompasses the animes Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and even though GT isn't technically canon, that, and also Super now, even though the movie really only goes up to the original Dragon Ball King Piccolo arc, and it does it very poorly. It was not a very good movie at all. Then you also have Japanese productions that have done Bleach, Full Metal Alchemist, Mob Psycho 100, and probably a few more that I'm not thinking of. And probably the most I don't want to say successful, but the most prominent anime movies that have come out in recent years probably been Speed Racer, which was done by the Wachowskis, and that was a bit different because that was a very early series. It's notorious for the dubbing being terrible. It was more of a joke in the United States than it was an actual drama series or an actual good series, just because of the way the dubbing was done. That was back in, I believe, the 80s. But the Wachowskis made Speed Racer the movie. It was not really successful, even though it is memorable. And the other one, which I'm going to talk about kind of at length, is the Ghost in the Shell movie, which starred Scarlett Johansson. Now, that one was supposed to be the one that broke the mold. That was the one that was supposed to make anime movies mainstream, or live-action anime movies mainstream, and supposed to start the trend. And it didn't. It flopped at the box office. It did terrible. People didn't like it at all. That kind of goes with a few different things, but I'm going to get into that. So, first off, we're going to examine the talent behind Alita Battle Angel. So, the film is being directed by Robert Rodriguez, who many people know from his various film projects. He had, I believe, Planet Terror was the one that he did out of the Grindhouse films. He did the Spy Kids movies. I believe he did both of the Sin City films as well. But he's known for his kind of grindhouse type of movies. Machete is another one by him. So he's not a bad choice to helm something. Although this seems a bit more serious than what he's normally used to. He's more used to like a splat stick comedy, and by that what I mean is like a really gory dark comedy, or darkly comedic. Sin City had drama moments in it, so I don't know. Maybe he can work with that. And then the screenplay is written by James Cameron, and it is the James Cameron Avatar, Titanic, Terminator 2, Terminator, Aliens, the whole spiel. Um, but here's the thing: I don't really have much faith in James Cameron these days. I actually personally hate Titanic and Avatar. Um, and then also you have the co-stars of the movie, which the lead is a relative unknown, but you have the co-stars of Christoph Waltz, who has won an Academy Award, Mahershala Ali, who has won an Academy Award, and Jennifer Connelly, who I think has been nominated. I don't think she's won one. But you have a very good supporting cast, especially Christoph Waltz, because I really enjoy him in most of the stuff that he's in. From Inglourious Bastards to Django. I even liked him in Green Hornet, even though that was a terrible movie. But it has star power both behind the pen, behind the camera, and in front of the camera. So that's always a good sign. But Ghost in the Shell had something similar to that too. You had Scarlett Johansson. Now, albeit the people that were writing and directing the movie weren't as well known as the ones that are doing this, which is probably why there's a difference in the budget. But just to point it out. So next, let's just quickly examine the budget. Now, the budget for this movie is about $200 million. And again, we have to examine that as that's without advertising. So the advertising for this, I would probably double that. I would probably say it's about $400 million total with advertising. Again, they had Super Bowl ads last year. I think they're going to have Super Bowl ads this year probably. And they're probably going to have a bunch more. They've been advertising everywhere. So I think that it's probably somewhere around 400 million, which would mean that they would probably have to make about 800 million for the movie to be considered somewhat successful. Because usually the rule of thumb is you double whatever the production budget you multiply times two whatever the production budget and the advertising budget combined happen to be, which is 400 million. So you'd look at 800. Now I don't know if it's going to hit that. I doubt it will. But just as another thing, Ghost in the Shell, which came out in 2017, I believe, had $110 million for a budget. Now, that movie wound up only making $169 million at the box office worldwide. So obviously that was a complete flop. They barely even made back the production budget, so they probably lost hundreds of millions of dollars on that movie. And that has been the tale of these films, is whenever they try to adapt something to live action, unless it is extremely low budget, it does not do well. And I think that has to relate to the style and the audience of anime and manga. And it's not the same thing with American superhero comics. Because if you look at what happens with Japanese manga, it looks a certain way. You can identify it by looking at it. You can tell what it is. You can tell if something is anime or manga by looking at it. You can tell by the design of the characters and the eyes and a bunch of other stuff. You can tell that is not necessarily American design. That has been designed by Japanese. It's a peak of Japanese culture, if you want to look at it that way. Because it's so easily identifiable. And the problem is that the audience that is built in for stuff like that is they want to see it in an animated format. They don't necessarily want to see it in live action. It's not like comic books. It's not like American comic books where people want to see these characters in live action and in cartoons too, because they made really good cartoons on American comic books as well. But they want to see these characters on the silver screen and see people playing them. It's not the same going the other way. People don't, the fans do not enjoy that type of adaptation. And whether it takes away some of the nuance of the character design, whether it takes away from the story, because the stories are usually altered, some quite a bit, some not. And it could also have to do with the storytelling too, because it's different than American comic books. American comic books generally have shorter story arcs than manga, because manga, the release schedule is a lot different. Whereas an American comic book, you can usually hope for, at best case scenario, from one of the big two is a bi-monthly release, which is twice a month. With manga, they release a 20-page manga chapter every week. Roughly 20 pages. I mean, it's in black and white, but most of the time. But at the same time, it's 20 pages a week. So you're getting 100. So you're getting 100 pages in 5 weeks, as opposed to an American comic, which is probably a little bit bigger. It's probably 20 to 30 pages, but in that same time period, you are, and I shouldn't say 5 weeks. Let's go with a month. Let's go with 4 weeks. So you're getting 80 pages out of a manga in 4 weeks. If you're going with American comics, you're only getting 60, and that's in 2 books instead of 4. So you're getting your comic less spread out. It's more centralized, and at the same time, you're also paying more for it because American comic books are more expensive generally than manga is. And actually, you can look at manga online for free in a lot of places. But American comic books, you're paying more, you're getting less. The visual quality, in many cases, is somewhat better, and you're getting stuff in color. But at the same time, it's people that like to read manga like to read stuff on a regular basis, and they don't really take breaks in Japan. They keep going and going and going until they hit a point where they either stop for a little while and take a hiatus, or they end the story. And but the thing is that the story arcs in manga are a lot longer than the ones in Western comic books. You could see stories in manga that last for years, and they take up far more pages. And when I say that, American comic books have had story arcs that have lasted for years. We've seen it before. But at the same time, you're getting less pages and less content. With the Japanese manga, you're getting many, many, many more pages, and you're getting a regular release schedule, usually every week. And ultimately, the story is going to be longer because of that. So you're going to be reading more pages. And I think that leads into problems with films, because a film has to condense that. If you're doing a 2-hour movie, you have to condense things down. It is far easier to do that with less material than it is with more. So I think that's a major factor in addition to the aesthetic problems of it. But just to go back to the actual subject at hand, Alita Battle Angel. I don't think this movie is going to make a profit from what they're looking at. I don't think this is going to be their breakthrough movie. This is not a big brand in terms of. It's a known brand, but it's not a big brand. It's not Dragon Ball. It's not Bleach. It's not Naruto. It's not Attack on Titan. It's not any of those. It's not Hellsing. It's not any of those bigger manga and anime brands that Americans might know. So you could say maybe that's an advantage as well, because it could mean that maybe people don't know that it's a manga or an anime, and they'll go into it fresh. But at the same time, it could also be a double-edged sword, where it's not well known enough, so you're not going to get the fan base in there. So it could go one of two ways, but I don't think this thing is going to make its money back. I think this thing is going to fall flat on its face, like everything else before it. And if what we can see is true, then that's what's going to happen. So thank you for listening, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?